Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Roy, and if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's that marrying into the wrong family can be one of the worst mistakes a man can make. You know, when people talk about marriage, they usually focus on love, how much you love your partner, how strong your connection is, how you can't imagine your life without them. And don't get me wrong, love is important. But what they don't tell you, or maybe what they don't emphasize enough, is that love alone is never enough. I used to think it was. The truth is, when you marry someone, you're not just marrying them, you're marrying into their family. And that family? They can either make your life easier or turn it into something you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. Some families welcome you with open arms. They treat you like one of their own, support your marriage, and respect your role in their daughter's life. And then, there are families like the one I married into. Families that make it clear from the start that you'll never be good enough. I learned this the hard way. And trust me, when I say hard, I mean every single bit of it. I met my wife, Beverly, in college, back when life felt simpler. She was beautiful in every way imaginable. She was smart, kind, and had this effortless charm about her. We clicked almost instantly, and before I knew it, we were spending all our free time together. It wasn't one of those whirlwind romances where everything moves too fast. It was steady, natural, and real. We built something solid over the years, and by the time we graduated, I was sure she was the one. At first, I knew her family was okay financially. They had a nice house, she never worried about money, and her lifestyle was comfortable. But nothing screamed extreme wealth. She wasn't the type to flaunt it. From the outside looking in, her life wasn't much different from mine. My own family was stable. We weren't struggling, but we weren't living in luxury either. So in my mind, we were on somewhat equal footing. That assumption shattered years later when marriage became a real conversation. Up until then, I had never met her family beyond a few casual mentions. But when things started getting serious, Beverly finally brought me home to meet them. That's when the illusion broke. I still remember pulling up to their house, or rather, their estate. A massive, gated property with perfectly trimmed hedges, towering pillars, and a driveway long enough to make you question if you should have packed snacks for the walk to the front door. The moment I stepped inside, it was clear I didn't belong. Beverly's parents weren't rude, not directly, but their body language was off. Her mother's eyes scanned me like she was sizing up a cheap suit, and her father's handshake lasted just long enough to make a point. Her two older sisters barely acknowledged me, exchanging quick glances like they were silently communicating their disapproval. No one had to say, "You're not good enough." It was all over their faces. I don't know if Beverly truly thought they'd welcome me, or if she just hoped they would. Either way, she saw it too. But after we left, she reassured me. She told me she loved me, that she didn't care what they thought, that I was the man she wanted. And because I loved her, I let myself believe that love would be enough. I ignored every warning sign, convinced myself that things would get better, that maybe they just needed time to warm up to me. Looking back, I should have known better. Beverly's family never truly approved of me. Sure, after a lot of back and forths, they eventually agreed to the marriage, but it was clear that their approval was reluctant and forced. They didn't welcome me in, they just tolerated me. And trust me, there's a big difference between the two. Now let me be clear, I wasn't some guy looking for a handout or trying to marry rich. I came from a decent family. We weren't struggling, but there are levels to wealth, and Beverly's family? They were on a whole different level. At first, I thought it didn't matter. Beverly loved me, I loved her, and that should have been enough. But I was wrong. In their world, money didn't just give them privilege. It gave them the right to look down on people like me. Her mother and two older sisters were the worst. They didn't just dislike me. They enjoyed making it known. Every visit was a new opportunity for them to remind me that I didn't belong. The jabs were constant, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. Her mother would make offhand comments about how Beverly used to have such high standards. Her sisters would joke about how I must have hit the jackpot, marrying into the family. But the real humiliation? They would say things right in front of me and laugh at my expense, knowing I wouldn't react, because what could I do? I wasn't about to start arguing with my wife's family in their own house. I tried to brush it off and pretend that they were just being petty, but after a while, it got under my skin. I hated going over there. Every single time, I told myself it would be the last, but Beverly always found a way to convince me otherwise. "They don't mean it that way," she'd say. "They'll come around." But they never did. And deep down, I think she knew it too. Maybe she just hoped that if we ignored it long enough, it would go away. But disrespect doesn't just disappear, it grows. At some point, I realized that as long as I kept showing up, I was giving them permission to keep treating me like this. But that's the thing about being pushed too far. Sooner or later, you push back. And when I did, I made sure they would never forget it. So, behind Beverly's back, I hired a private investigator. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but at that point, I didn't care about playing fair. I wanted leverage. I wanted something that would wipe those smug looks off their faces. And if there was any dirt to be found, I knew exactly where to look, her sisters. They were the worst offenders, the ones who went out of their way to belittle me every chance they got. If there was something to uncover, I was willing to bet it would be with them. Now, all I had to do was wait. The waiting was the hardest part. I had no idea how long it would take or if it would even pay off, but I was willing to be patient. The investigator told me these things take time, and he was right. Weeks turned into months, and I tried not to think about it too much. Then, one evening, I got the call. The investigator wanted to meet in person. That was my first clue that he had found something big. When we met, I found out that the oldest sister, Miss Perfect, the one who looked down on me the most, was having an affair with the younger sister's fiancé. And it wasn't just one or two blurry pictures either. There were multiple shots of them together. One picture even caught them in an intimate embrace. It was all there. For a moment, I just stared at the photos. This was it. My weapon. I could already picture the chaos this would cause. But as tempting as it was to drop the bomb right away, I knew that timing was everything. If I was going to do this, I had to wait for the right moment, the one time where they would never see it coming. So I tucked the envelope away and started watching, waiting, planning. It wasn't a matter of if I would use it. It was only a matter of when. Now, let me tell you about Thanksgiving at my in-laws' house. Every year, Beverly's family throws this big, over-the-top Thanksgiving dinner. A family gathering. They invite extended relatives and family. There was fancy catering and expensive decorations, with everyone dressed like they were attending some high society gala instead of a family dinner. But for me, these dinners have always been a nightmare. I can't stand them. To me, these events are just another excuse for Beverly's family to show off and, more importantly, to sit around and silently judge everyone else. It's not about being thankful. It's not about family bonding. It's about appearances, about who has the most going on. Every conversation feels like a competition, and I've always been on the losing end. No matter what I did, I was never quite good enough in their eyes. I didn't come from their world, and they made sure I never forgot it. But this year was different. For the first time, I wasn't dreading Thanksgiving. I was looking forward to it. I was ready. I had been waiting for this moment for months. I wasn't going to let them humiliate me like they always did. This time, I had something of my own, and I was going to make sure they felt what it was like to be on the receiving end. The night played out exactly how I expected. Forced smiles, fake politeness, and an atmosphere filled with condescension. When it was time for the gift exchange, I wasn't surprised when they skipped over me. Everyone else received their presents, beautifully wrapped boxes, expensive jewelry, designer accessories. But me? Nothing. Beverly's mother put on her most exaggerated, insincere expression of surprise and let out a little laugh. "Oh, Roy, I almost forgot about you." She turned to one of Beverly's sisters and whispered something before they reached under the table and pulled out a tiny, poorly wrapped package. I already knew this wasn't a mistake. It was just another one of their little games, another jab at me. I took my time unwrapping the gift, peeling back the paper as the room fell into a hushed anticipation. When I finally opened the box, I saw it, a $10 gas station gift card. That was it. Just $10 to spend at a gas station. The second I laid eyes on it, laughter exploded around the room. Beverly's sisters practically doubled over, covering their mouths as they giggled like children. Even her father chuckled under his breath. I could see the amusement on their faces, the satisfaction of knowing they had taken another shot at me and expected me to just sit there and take it. But I didn't react the way they wanted. I smiled as I cleared my throat and said, "Well, since we're giving out gifts, I actually brought something special for Beverly's sisters." The room quieted almost instantly. I could see Beverly's sisters exchanging a glance. They weren't expecting this. I reached under my chair and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box. I took my time as I handed it over. "Go ahead," I said, nodding toward Beverly's oldest sister. "Open it." The second the wrapping was torn away, the energy in the room shifted. The smug amusement on her face vanished as she stared at the contents inside. A stack of photographs, clear, undeniable, and damning. There she was, caught in intimate moments with the younger sister's fiancé. Some photos showed them together at a lounge, others in places they definitely shouldn't have been if they were just family friends. Her face turned pale as she quickly flipped through them, her hands shaking. Before she could say a word, the younger sister snatched the photos from her, and her entire expression twisted into something between shock and fury. "What the hell is this?" she practically screamed. The room was no longer filled with laughter. Now, all eyes were on them. Beverly's parents looked between their daughters in disbelief, struggling to process what was happening. I leaned back in my chair, watching the scene unfold, finally feeling like I had taken control. Tonight, I flipped the script. And the best part? The show was just getting started. Beverly's oldest sister was caught completely off guard and stammering, reaching for an excuse that wasn't there. I don't know what this is," she tried, but the way her body language told a different story. The younger sister wasn't buying it. She shoved the pictures in the oldest sister's face, her voice rising with every word. "You've been screwing my fiancé. How long has this been going on? Do you think I'm stupid?" Before anyone could react, the younger sister lunged. A full-blown fight exploded right in the middle of the elegant Thanksgiving dinner. Glasses shattered as the table shook from the force of their struggle. Hands grabbed at hair, nails scratched at skin, and wild screaming filled the air. Relatives gasped in horror, some frozen in shock, others awkwardly stepping back, unsure of whether to intervene. Beverly's parents leaped into action as they desperately tried to pry their daughters apart. Their father barked orders, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. Their mother was hysterical, grabbing at the younger sister's arm, while she yelled the oldest sister's name over and over, as if that would somehow fix things. Beverly was shocked by how everything escalated. She had no idea of this plan. And me? I sat back, watching it all unfold with a satisfaction I couldn't even put into words. When the fight was finally broken up, the room fell into an awkward, heavy silence. The air was thick with tension, the younger sister still seething, the oldest sister looking like she wanted to disappear, and their parents standing in the middle of the mess, struggling to regain their composure. Then, their mother turned to me. Her face was red with fury. She pointed at me. "You're the devil," she spat. I tilted my head, amused. Devil? Maybe. But if I was the devil, they had spent years summoning me. Their father had no time for insults. He looked at me with a cold stare and said, "Get out." I turned to Beverly, waiting for her to follow me. But before she could even take a step, her father snapped, "You stay right there." His voice was firm. I glanced at Beverly, half expecting her to push back, to remind him that she was a grown woman, that she had a husband she should be leaving with. But she hesitated. I laughed. Even now, just thinking about it makes me laugh. I didn't argue. I simply walked out. A few hours after I left, my phone started ringing. It was Beverly. I already knew what was coming, so I took my time before answering. The moment I picked up, she exploded. She was furious, her voice sharp with anger as she accused me of tearing her family apart. She went on and on, barely stopping to breathe. I could tell she wasn't calling to hear my side. She had already made up her mind that I was the villain in all of this. But the funny thing was, I wasn't even mad. I was just done. So, while she ranted, I laughed. The more she yelled, the harder I laughed. It drove her insane. She kept asking if I thought this was funny, and if I even understood what I had done. But the truth is, I didn't care. For years, I had swallowed their insults, ignored their little humiliations, and played the quiet, polite husband while they mocked me in my own presence. They wanted to push me down, keep me in my place. But that night, I flipped the script. I gave them something real to fight about. If Beverly had told me right then that she wanted a divorce, I would have told her to go ahead, because I was fed up. I had given that family more patience than they ever deserved, and if this was the final straw for her, so be it. But she didn't leave. Instead, she stayed at her parents' house for a week. I didn't call her, didn't text. I wasn't going to chase after someone who needed time to decide if she still wanted to be with me. Let her figure it out on her own. When she finally came back, she didn't bring up the dinner right away. But I knew. I knew she wasn't back because she had forgiven me or because she suddenly understood why I did what I did. She was back because she had nowhere else to go. Her family might have been angry at me, but deep down, they knew I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the one sneaking around with someone else's fiancé. For the first few days, she was cold. She spoke less and kept to herself. I let her have her space. If she had something to say, she'd say it when she was ready. And eventually, she did. One night, while we were sitting in the living room, she finally looked at me and said, "You know you were wrong for that." I just smirked. "Wrong?" I asked, tilting my head like I didn't understand. "Nah. I just finally gave them a taste of their own medicine." She rolled her eyes, but I could tell she wasn't really mad anymore. I teased her a little, making jokes about how her sisters must still be fighting over the mess I exposed. She tried to keep a straight face, but I saw the corner of her lips twitch. That was it. That was how I knew we were back to normal. She didn't like what I did, but she wasn't leaving over it. And honestly, I didn't regret a damn thing. It's been months since that Thanksgiving night, and honestly, I haven't lost a single night of sleep over it. I have no idea how Beverly's family handled the mess after I left, and to be honest, I don't care. Maybe they found a way to sweep it under the rug, or the tension in that house is still as thick as ever. Either way, it's not my problem. What matters to me is that I no longer have to deal with their constant jabs and disrespect. I'm not walking on eggshells around them. It's a kind of peace I should have fought for a long time ago. Of course, Beverly's parents still expect me to come crawling back with an apology. That's never going to happen. I can only imagine the conversations they've had about me, probably calling me childish, petty, or disrespectful. But let's be real. They had no problem disrespecting me for years, making me feel like I wasn't good enough for their daughter. The moment I decided to fight back, suddenly, I was the bad guy. No, I refuse to play that game. If they want to stay mad, they can. It doesn't change the fact that I'm finally free from their nonsense. Looking back, I've learned a lot from this whole experience. And if there's anything I can pass on to you, it's these 4 lessons. First, never ignore the red flags before marriage. Love is great, but it's not enough to erase deep-seated family issues. If you're constantly being disrespected before the wedding, don't fool yourself into thinking it'll get better after you say, "I do." If anything, it only gets worse. Second, your partner's support is everything. If you're with someone who never stands up for you, you're in trouble. I spent years trying to get Beverly to see how her family treated me, but she always made excuses for them. She never had my back when I needed her to, and that's something I should have taken more seriously. Third, respect is non-negotiable. If people feel comfortable disrespecting you, it's because you've allowed it for too long. I let Beverly's family walk all over me because I didn't want to cause drama. But the truth is, sometimes you have to be willing to shake the table. The day I stopped letting them treat me like a joke was the day I took my power back. And finally, revenge is best served cold. Now, I'm not saying you should always get back at people, but if you ever do, make sure it counts. Timing is everything. I didn't react out of anger. I waited, I planned, and when the moment was right, I turned their own world upside down. So let me ask you, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have handled it differently, or did I do exactly what needed to be done? Let me know in the comments.